tourists and National Trust rangers saw the legendary fin disappear into a magical doorway within the rock face here at the Giant's Causeway.
Every civilization that has ever existed on this planet has told the same story. Something ancient is sealed inside the Earth, something that was here before us. For thousands of years, we called these stories mythology. Then, in 2024, a tourist's drone recorded a basalt slab at the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, sliding open by itself. When scientists aimed sonar at the wall behind it, they found the mythology was not mythology at all. Something is standing in there, and it has not moved in 60 million years. The door that shouldn't exist. To understand what opened in that cliff face, you first need to understand what the Giant's Causeway actually is. It's a geological reality, which is far stranger than any legend ever written about this place. 62 million years ago, the continent of Laurasia was tearing itself apart. The fracture that would become the North Atlantic Ocean ripped through the crust of what is now Northern Ireland, and instead of explosive volcanoes, the damage produced something worse. Fissures opened in the ground for kilometers at a stretch, and massive sheets of basalt lava poured across the land surface like a slow-moving flood. Geologists classify these as Hawaiian-style eruptions. They are not dramatic. They are relentless. At the Causeway site, 7 separate lava flows stacked on top of each other over thousands of years. Each flow was approximately 30 meters thick. The total basalt deposit along the cliffs measures up to 28 meters, and the cliffs themselves rise roughly 100 meters above sea level. As each layer of lava cooled, something remarkable happened. The contracting rock did not crack randomly. It organized itself. Stress fractures formed first at 90-degree angles, then migrated to 120-degree angles, which is the most energy-efficient geometry for dividing a flat surface into equal cells. This is the same mathematics that governs the structure of honeycomb, the pattern of bubbles in foam, and the arrangement of cells in plant tissue. The result at the Causeway is approximately 40,000 interlocking basalt columns, mostly hexagonal, with an average diameter of 45 centimeters and heights reaching up to 12 meters. On a clear afternoon in 2024, a man launched a small camera drone above the eastern cliff face to get aerial video of the columns. The footage shows exactly what you would expect for the first 90 seconds. Hexagonal pillars stretching toward the sea. Then, near a dense cluster of columns on the eastern face, a section of basalt, approximately 2 meters wide, separated from the surrounding rock and swung outward in a single controlled arc. It held position for 11 seconds. Then, it returned to the cliff face and sealed shut. Park Ranger Thomas Brennan was standing 40 meters away when it happened. He reached for his radio and dropped it twice because his hands would not stop shaking. When he finally got through, his voice cracked on the word door. 11 seconds that broke everything. 4 witnesses were on the rocks near the eastern face when it happened. Investigators interviewed each one separately within hours. None of them mentioned the door first. Every single one of them started by describing the same physical sensation. Before the rock moved, they felt a pressure building in their chests. Not pain, pressure. A slow, rhythmic pushing against the inside of their ribcage, like standing next to an engine they could not hear. One witness said it felt like the ground had a heartbeat. Science has a name for this. It is called infrasound, and it is one of the most powerful and least understood forces acting on the human body. Sound below 20 hertz falls beneath the threshold of human hearing. Your ears cannot detect it, but your organs can. Your lungs, your heart, your intestines, and critically your brain all respond to low-frequency vibration even when you are completely unaware that any sound exists. In 1990, researcher Vic Tandy was working late in a medical equipment laboratory in Warwick, England, when he experienced sudden cold sweating, crushing depression, and the visual perception of a gray figure approaching him from the side. When he turned his head, there was nothing there. He was terrified. The next day, he discovered that a new extractor fan in the building was generating a standing wave at 18.98 hertz, and that this frequency matched the resonant frequency of the room. NASA had already established that the human eyeball vibrates at approximately 18 hertz. At that frequency, your eyes physically shake inside their sockets, producing a smearing effect in peripheral vision that the brain interprets as a dark, moving shape. Tandy did not see a ghost. His own biology manufactured one. In 2003, Professor Richard Wiseman took this further. He concealed a 7-meter infrasonic generator inside a London concert hall and exposed 750 people to embedded 17 hertz tones during live performances. Nobody in the audience was told which pieces contained infrasound. Afterward, 22% of listeners reported unexplained experiences exclusively during the infrasound segments. Anxiety without cause, sudden waves of grief, chills running from the base of the spine to the skull, pressure on the chest so intense that several people thought they were having a heart attack. One listener said she was overwhelmed by a vivid memory of her mother's funeral that she had not thought about in years. Now consider where the giant's Causeway sits. It is a basalt cliff face meeting the open Atlantic Ocean. Every wave that strikes that cliff delivers up to 30 tons of pressure per square meter against the rock. That energy converts to vibration, and basalt is one of the most efficient conductors of seismic waves on the planet. With P-wave velocities between 3.0 and 6.5 kilometers per second. At Fingal's Cave, on the island of Staffa in Scotland, formed from the exact same lava flow as the Causeway, the basalt columns create such intense acoustic resonance that the cave produces a booming sound audible from far away. Historical accounts describe visitors being so frightened by the noise that they refused to enter. The 4 witnesses at the Causeway did not hear the infrasound. Their bodies heard it for them. Investigators examined the drone footage frame by frame afterward, timestamps intact. The footage was authenticated by 3 independent analysts. In the frames after the slab returned to the wall, the basalt surface showed no gap, no fracture line, no seam of any kind. The rock looked as though it had never moved. The stone erased its own evidence. 3 days later, a geological survey team brought ground-penetrating sonar to the eastern cliff face. They expected a shallow gas pocket, a routine void. What they found instead was a sealed chamber containing objects that have been standing upright in total darkness since before the dinosaurs went extinct. The figures standing in the dark. Before we look at what the sonar found, consider something that archaeologists have known for decades but rarely discuss in public. Across the ancient world, civilization after civilization sealed humanoid figures inside stone chambers and then closed the doors permanently. The Lycians of southern Turkey did it 2,400 years ago. The Egyptians did it 4,600 years ago. The builders of Newgrange in Ireland did it 5,200 years ago. At the ancient city of Myra in southern Turkey, Professor Nevzat Çevik has spent years excavating what he calls Anatolia's Pompeii. The city lies buried under 4 to 10 meters of alluvial silt, but the cliff necropolis above it survives intact. Over 100 rock-cut tombs from the 4th century BCE are carved directly into sheer limestone faces. They reproduce the architecture of wooden houses in carved stone, complete with imitation roof beams, door panels, and interior couches. The lion tomb features an Ionic temple facade with a triangular pediment showing a lion attacking a bull, and contains 11 life-sized human figures. When the explorer Charles Fellows documented these figures in 1840, paint in red, yellow, and blue was still visible on the stone after more than 2 millennia. The Lycian tombs were sealed with sliding stone doors that ran along carved grooves, a mechanism so effective that in 2021, treasure hunters in the Antalya region had to use dynamite to breach a tomb that had remained shut for 2,500 years. They could not open it any other way. And in 2020, Professor Çevik's team unearthed dozens of 2,200-year-old terracotta figurines beneath the Roman theater at Myra, some with original paint still preserved. Çevik described the discovery as if the people of ancient Myra had been resurrected and come running through a time tunnel to the present day. Now, consider what Dr. Margaret Sullivan of Queen's University Belfast saw on her laptop screen when the Causeway sonar data loaded. Sullivan is a career geologist with decades of subsurface imaging experience. She pulled up the first scan, leaned forward, and did not speak or move for nearly an hour. Her assistant placed a cup of coffee beside her. It went cold, untouched. When her colleague, Dr. Ronan Gallagher, asked what she was looking at, she raised one hand without turning from the screen and said 2 words, "Not yet." The sonar revealed a sealed chamber behind the basalt wall. Inside that chamber, several tall, narrow, upright forms stood in a line, evenly spaced, perfectly vertical. The proportions were humanoid, broad across the top, narrowing in the middle, with rounded forms consistent with heads. Their height exceeded 8 feet. Sullivan ran the scan 4 times using 2 different instruments. Every pass returned identical results. Here is why this is not comparable to the Lycian tombs or any other archaeological site on Earth. The Lycian figures were carved by human hands and placed inside chambers built by human engineers. Whatever is standing inside the Causeway wall was there before the rock existed. The 2018 Liverpool study proved that basalt columns form at 840 to 890 degrees Celsius after the lava has already solidified. At those temperatures, all organic matter is chemically destroyed. Proteins break apart at 60 degrees. Calcium in bone begins to calcite at 700 degrees. At 840 degrees, biology does not burn. It ceases to exist as organized matter. These figures were standing in position while the ground around them was hot enough to glow. The lava did not kill them, it sealed them, and they have been standing in that exact formation for 60 million years. That evening, lead sonar technician Declan Foley told his supervisor he would not return to the eastern cliff. He said the equipment had detected a secondary signal underneath the geological data, a faint vibration passing through the rock in a slow, repeating cycle. He said it sounded like something behind the wall was breathing, and he said whatever was producing that sound seemed to know the equipment was listening. Something behind the wall is breathing. There is a French academic named Igor Reznikov who has spent decades doing something no other scientist does. He enters ancient underground spaces, Paleolithic painted caves, Neolithic burial chambers, Bronze Age passage tombs, and he sings. Not for ceremony. Reznikov is an acoustic anthropologist, and his research has revealed something about stone enclosures that changes the way we understand every sacred underground space ever built by human hands. The phenomenon is called Helmholtz resonance. When air is trapped inside a rigid cavity, connected to the outside by a small opening or a network of fissures, that air vibrates at a specific frequency determined by the volume and geometry of the space. Reznikov tested ancient burial mounds across Britain and Ireland. He discovered that many were not accidentally resonant. Their dimensions appeared to be deliberately tuned. When he produced sound at the natural frequency of a chamber, the entire structure would begin to vibrate. Walls, floor, ceiling, and every body inside the space would pulse together. He described the experience in language that sounds less like science than prayer. He said that, at the peak of resonance, the whole body vibrates together with the ground, the earth, the darkness, and the depth of sound. Other researchers found that drumming at approximately 2 beats per second inside these structures would trigger resonance powerful enough to physically elevate the pulse rate and breathing of every person present. Think about what this means for the sealed chamber behind the Causeway wall. If that cavity connects to the outside air through even microscopic fissures in the basalt, and if tidal pressure and Atlantic wave energy are forcing air through those fissures in rhythmic pulses synchronized to the ocean, the chamber would function as a massive natural resonator. It would produce infrasound tuned to its own geometry. The frequency would be too low to hear, but the vibration would travel through the basalt columns at 3 to 6 kilometers per second and reach the surface as a slow rhythmic pulse that the human body interprets as one thing: breathing. The vibration would accelerate and decelerate with the tides. It would intensify during storms, and to anyone standing on the rock above or beside that chamber, the sensation would be indistinguishable from the presence of something alive beneath their feet. Your heart rate would increase. Your breathing would deepen. The amygdala would activate. Every survival instinct in your body would tell you that something large and living was on the other side of the stone. Authorities restricted access to the eastern section of the Causeway within days. But the vibration sensors the investigation team had embedded in the rock were left in place. They continued transmitting. For 3 months, nobody reviewed the data. When environmental monitoring specialist Dr. Aisling Maguire finally opened 6 months of continuous sensor recordings. She expected background geological noise. Instead, she found a rhythmic pulse that had not stopped since the sensors were installed, and the intervals between pulses had shortened by nearly 12%. The rhythm was accelerating. It knows when you're close. Dr. McGuire-Cross referenced the vibration intensity with the site access logs, and the data stopped making geological sense. On 3 separate occasions, the vibration amplitude surged sharply, not gradually, instantly. The first surge occurred when 2 maintenance workers walked near the restricted section to inspect the rope barrier. The second was recorded during a nighttime equipment check. The third happened on a morning when tourists accidentally crossed the boundary before staff redirected them. McGuire checked every possible confounding variable: seismic activity elsewhere in Northern Ireland, temperature fluctuations, wind speed. None of them correlated with the spikes. Only one variable matched every single surge in vibration intensity: the physical proximity of human beings. McGuire sat with those correlations for 2 days before writing her report. She told a colleague off the record that the vibration source appeared to be responsive rather than passive, not driven by environmental pressure, reactive to presence. Her colleague later said McGuire used a single word she had never heard her use in 15 years of collaboration. She described whatever was behind that wall as aware. There is a rational explanation. If the chamber behind the wall resonates at a frequency close to the frequencies generated by human footsteps on basalt, then increased foot traffic on the surface would inject more energy into the system and amplify the vibration. The stone would not need to be alive. It would only need to be shaped in exactly the right way to respond to the weight of a human body. The Causeway is not the only ancient site where stone appears to respond to human presence. Across the world, sealed chambers open, ancient doors move, and passages rearrange themselves in patterns that engineering alone cannot explain. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Doors that move across the world. The Great Pyramid of Giza was sealed by a swivel door weighing approximately 20 tons. It was balanced on its center of gravity so precisely that a single person could push it open from inside with one hand. From outside, it was invisible. The fit between the door and the surrounding casing stones was so exact that the Greek geographer Strabo recorded that you could not find the entrance unless someone showed you where it was. When Caliph al-Mamun attempted to enter the pyramid in 820 AD, his workers searched the exterior surface and could not locate the door. They gave up looking and tunneled through solid stone instead. The original entrance was only identified after they were already inside. For over 4,000 years, a 20-ton slab of stone hid in plain sight on the most famous building on Earth. 3 massive granite blocks still seal the ascending passage of the Great Pyramid today, unmoved since they were placed 4,600 years ago. Above them, the Grand Gallery contains 56 carved slots in its walls that archaeologists believe held timber beams designed to restrain these blocks during construction. An antechamber beyond the gallery held portcullis stones weighing roughly 1,700 kilograms each, designed to drop into position and seal the passage permanently. Every internal feature of the pyramid was engineered around one principle: total, permanent, invisible closure. At Newgrange in Ireland, built around 3,200 BCE, 5 centuries before the Great Pyramid, the builders created the oldest confirmed movable stone mechanism in the world. A pair of quartz blocks positioned above the entrance passage functioned as a sliding shutter. On the morning of the winter solstice, these blocks were opened to allow a beam of sunlight to travel through a narrow roof box and illuminate the central burial chamber for exactly 17 minutes. The quartz blocks show wear marks, consistent with centuries of repeated sliding. This ancient shutter was not built to control who entered the tomb. It was built to control what light reached the dead. In the Jordanian desert, at the fortress of Qasr al-Azraq, basalt doors weighing several tons each still swing on their original pivot mechanisms nearly 2,000 years after Roman engineers installed them. They are single slabs of volcanic stone, and despite their mass, one person can push them open. The engineering secret is the same as the Great Pyramid: finding the exact center of balance in an irregularly shaped stone and placing the pivot there. Edward Leedskalnin applied this principle at Coral Castle in Florida, where his 9-ton revolving gate, carved from a single block of coral limestone, could be turned with one finger until the bearing failed in 1986. And then there is Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, the longest cave system on Earth, with over 426 miles of surveyed passages and a projected ultimate length that could exceed 1,000 miles. Mammoth Cave is not static. It is an active geological system where sediment fills passages, boulders shift, and routes that were opened during one expedition have been found sealed during the next. The cave has 5 distinct levels carved over 10 million years into limestone that formed 330 to 340 million years ago. At least 7 pre-Columbian mummies have been recovered from deep within the system. The most famous is a man known as Lost John, discovered in 1935 by Civilian Conservation Corps workers 2.5 miles from the entrance. He was a gypsum miner who died approximately 2,400 years ago when a 6-ton limestone boulder shifted and pinned him to the cave floor. An autopsy found hickory nuts and sunflower seeds in his stomach, his final meal, preserved for millennia in the cave's constant 54-degree Fahrenheit temperature. A woman called Fawn Hoof was found in 1811, seated upright inside a stone crypt 10 feet below the cave floor, wrapped in decorated deerskins and surrounded by 7 feather headdresses, bone needles, and rattlesnake skins. She had been placed underground with deliberate care by people who believed something about that stone chamber would preserve her beyond death. Every one of these sites involves stone that moves. Every one involves chambers that hold something meant to stay sealed. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern engineered into the oldest structures on every inhabited continent. And 3 weeks before this investigation was made public, a fisherman anchored near the base of the eastern cliff at the Giant's Causeway heard something rising from the rocks just above the waterline. He said it was slow, heavy, patient. He said it sounded like breathing. He pulled his anchor and left. He has not gone back. The Giant remembers. The writer Thackeray came to the Giant's Causeway in 1842 and described the place in terms that read less like a travel journal and more like a warning. He wrote that it looked like the beginning of the world, that the sea appeared older than in other places, and that the rocks seemed to belong to an era when vast, dubious monsters possessed the earth before man. He was writing about atmosphere. He may have been writing about something more precise than he realized. Here is what the tourist industry does not tell you, and what changes this entire story. The name Giant's Causeway is an English translation that sanitizes the original. In Irish, this place is called Clochan Nab Ha Fomhorach. It means the stepping stones of the Fomorians, not the stepping stones of Finn McCool, not the causeway of a friendly giant, the Fomorians. In Irish mythology, the Fomorians are not characters in a fairy tale. They are the oldest and most terrifying beings in the entire mythological tradition. They represent chaos, violence, and the forces of nature in its most destructive and ungovernable form. They predate the gods. They predate the arrival of every race that colonized Ireland in the mythological cycles. They are what was here before anything else. Some texts describe them as monstrous, others describe them as ancient beyond human measurement. In every version, they are associated with the sea, with darkness, and with the earth itself. The character of Fionn MacCumhail, the real one, not the Finn McCool of the brochures, belongs to a completely different mythological layer called the Fenian cycle. In the original medieval texts, Fionn is not a giant. He is a human warrior and poet who gained supernatural knowledge as a boy by burning his thumb on the salmon of knowledge while cooking it on the banks of the River Boyne. The burn transferred all the world's wisdom into him, and from that moment on, he could access that knowledge by biting his thumb. His power comes from language and vision, not from size. W.B.B. Yeats recognized the distortion as early as 1888, noting that Ireland's pagan heroes grew bigger and bigger in popular imagination until they became giants. Scholar Seeley Nemur of University College Cork made the same point in 2024, observing that Fionn has been flattened into a generic hero and an easily marketable symbol of Old Ireland, when the literary tradition reveals a far more complex and troubling figure. The tourist version of the Causeway legend says Fionn built the stones to cross the sea and fight his Scottish rival. But the oldest tradition does not credit the Causeway to Fionn at all. It was already there. It belonged to the Fomorians. There is another version of the legend that almost nobody knows. In the 1700s and 1800s, guides at the Causeway told visitors a different story. In this version, Fionn built the path not for battle but for love, trying to reach a giantess on the island of Staffa and bring her home to Ireland. A poem recording this version, written in 1830 by someone identified only as Mary Ann, was discovered in a Norwegian library by researcher Eva Hove. The Stukens headland at the Causeway still features a rock formation that locals call the stooped figure of Granny. Frozen in stone, forever watching the sea toward Scotland, across that water, on the island of Staffa, sits Fingal's Cave. It formed from the identical basalt lava flow during the same Paleogene eruptions, the same hexagonal columns, the same volcanic chemistry. In Scottish Gaelic, the cave is called Uam Bin, the Cave of Melody. Its acoustic properties are so extraordinary that Felix Mendelssohn composed his Hebrides Overture visiting in 1829. Under certain tidal and atmospheric conditions, the basalt interior resonates with a deep, sustained sound that visitors have called the voice of the earth. The cave is 72 feet tall and 270 feet. It has been singing for 60 million years. Irish fishermen along the Causeway coast still observe taboos that date back centuries. They will not speak the name of a pig at sea, calling it instead the fellow with the curly tail. A fox or hare is never named directly. Anything red on a fishing boat is deeply unlucky. And when something feels wrong on the water, when the chest tightens and the hairs rise for no apparent reason, the traditional ward is two words spoken aloud: cold iron. The fishermen do not explain what they are protecting themselves from. They do not need to. Whatever it is, has been in these waters longer than their language has existed. The sensors at the Giant's Causeway are still transmitting. The vibration pattern has not stopped. The intervals between pulses continue to shorten. Authorities have refused to release the sonar images publicly. The eastern section of the formation remains closed behind barriers. The drone footage has been verified as authentic. The stone door opened once on camera. It may have been opening for millennia. The Causeway sits above a collapsed magma chamber, its columns fractured into hexagonal geometry at temperatures hot enough to glow. Ocean waves drive rhythmic infrasound through the basalt at speeds exceeding 3 kilometers per second. A sealed cavity amplifies that energy into a pulse that the human body registers as breathing. And inside that cavity, standing in a darkness that has lasted since the age of dinosaurs, are forms that assumed their positions before the rock existed around them. Every civilization that has existed on this planet sealed something inside stone and built doors to keep it there. The oldest name for this place does not speak of heroes or giants. It speaks of the Fomorians, the beings of chaos, the ones who were here before the gods, before humans, before the world was given its present shape. The stone remembers what we have forgotten, and every 6 months, the breathing gets a little faster. What do you think is really sealed behind that stone? Drop your wildest theory in the comments. And if this story changed the way you look at ancient rock, share it with someone who needs to hear it.